Hello humans! Today I wanted to talk about this guy right here. This is a Schrade old-timer Littlefinger. So these guys have a bit of a history to them. They have been around. The old-timer specifically has been in production for a very long period of time. It's gone through plenty of different changes, which means that the version that is on sale today is very meaningfully different from the version that I have right here. I picked this up at an antique store a couple of years, almost 4 years ago now, but I picked this up at an antique store years ago, and I've had it for quite a while, and I've used it for quite a while, and it was old when I got it. So this thing has been around the block. It is meaningfully different from the ones that are currently made. Some of the ways that it is meaningfully different, this one here is marked USA because this one here was made in the USA. Back when they were making them in the USA. The modern versions are made in China, which matters if it matters to you. I'm at the moment in a country that the USA has declared economic war on, so I don't really give a shit one way or the other. But, it is worth noting. Alright, so in terms of materials here, we have non-stainless steel. I don't know exactly what steel this is. It is a carbon steel. I know that Oldtimer has used, and Schrade has used, like 1095 at the top end for their carbon steels, but they've also used other stuff. This could be pretty much anything. I wasn't really able to find any sources that told me what it was exactly. Given its performance, I would suggest that it would be like 1075 or 1080, but it could be other things. I'm not 100% sure. But it is definitely a carbon steel. You can tell from the corroding that is occurring. It's not a bad steel by any means. It does hold an edge quite nicely, and it seems to be fairly tough. Not exemplary tough, but fairly tough. So my money would be on it being a simple carbon somewhere in the 10-something family. Could be 5160, but I wouldn't bet on that. We also have Saw-Cut Delrin, which is an old-timer absolute favorite. It's basically just a slab of it, though, of the Saw-Cut Delrin. It is quite comfortable in the hand for what it is. All the edges have been nicely rounded over and knocked down. Saw-Cut Delrin, and we have nickel-silver bolsters. Full tank construction. You can see an interesting thing here with the bolsters is, even though the tang is exposed at the back, in the front, it actually clamshells over, which is kind of nice. Not super meaningful in any particular way, but it is kind of neat that they go ahead and do that. We have our old-timer shield in the Delrin, and we have a leather sheath. This does help kind of track down when this particular model came. This would have been the Gen 2 sheaths with the single rivet. There are earlier versions of the leather sheath with multiple rivets, and there are later versions of this exact same style of sheath with 3 rivets. 1, 2, 3. But this version right here only has the 2, and the current version is entirely different yet again. So the sheath design on these does change quite a bit, but it is a fairly simple leather sheath. Fold over belt loop, good retention, but not super duper meaningful in any particular kind of way. But yeah, it is a nice little sheath. It fits nicely on the belt. For the blade itself, we have the Schrade Oldtimer website says 2.5 inches. Other sources say up to 2 3/4. I'm going to bet. Okay. I was going to say, I'm going to bet that the 2.5 is for the sharpened edge, and the 2 3/4 is going to be probably to the front of the bolster here. And yeah, that's kind of what I'm seeing. And then from the sharpened edge back to, a little bit less than 2.5 from the sharpened edge forward. So yeah, it does seem to be more or less 2.5 inches of sharpened edge with that belly, and then 2 3/4 inches if you go from the front of the bolster to the tip. Which does make a good amount of sense. We have a phenomenal finger choil here, and in use especially, it's really nice being able to get behind that edge. This is actually a convex ground blade. The convex grind goes all the way to the top. We do have a slight secondary bevel, but the convex grind goes all the way to the top, which means that for whittling and stuff like that, this actually does a phenomenal job. A lot of people really appreciate this as a skinner as well because it is so thin and nimble, which I can definitely appreciate it being quite useful for that. You can get behind the bolsters here, and you get a good ways back, and it's not bad for like harder use tasks being back here, but this thing really does excel at those more nimble, high dexterity tasks, skinning, whittling, fine woodworking, that kind of a thing. And to that end, what we have is a very butt-heavy blade. You can see the balance point is right around this pin, which is a good ways back. It's actually behind my second finger if I am in that choil, and it's behind my first finger if I am behind the bolster for whittling and that kind of a thing, which seems pretty far back, and like this is not a big blade by any stretch of the imagination, which does lead to this feeling very, very light and nimble in cuts. It's very easy to work with for an extended period of time. Because all of the edges are nicely knocked down, like the only hotspot on this is if you have anything on the front of this, on the front of the bolsters here, because this is an actual sharp edge. That being said, there's nowhere good to strike a fire steel. All of the edges on the spine and stuff like that are all nicely knocked down. The inside of the choil is nicely knocked down. So it is a very comfortable knife, but not necessarily the best bushcrafting knife. And because you've got such a small blade, you know, it's not great for like batoning or anything like that. For some size comparisons, here it is next to the Civivi Chevalier and the WE Knives Banter. As you can see, it is a good deal smaller than either. Actually, it might be... Oh, no. It is ever so slightly bigger than the Banter if you count the whole handle. But you can see, like, the end of the handle is about an inch. Or the start of the blade is about an inch further ahead than on the Banter. Just because this is very much set up to be a quote-unquote small-bladed fixed blade. And then here we have the Buck Knives 110. As you can see, it is quite a bit smaller than the Buck 110. And a Zippo lighter. Even though this doesn't go in the pocket very easily, I will do thickness real quick for you guys. It's slightly thinner than the Buck 110, not by a whole lot. This is a fairly thick object. I mean, being a fixed blade, it's not as important that it be super thin. Yeah, and it is a bit thicker than the Zippo lighter. Being a fixed blade, it obviously isn't as important that it be super thin, and the extra heft here is really good. It creates a very, very comfortable grip. Like, this thing's main selling point out of everything. This older version, the convex grind, is really good. But also, even with the newer versions, this thing's main selling feature is just how comfortable it is in the hand, even for an extended period of time. This is nice to use. Yeah. With the more modern versions, 7CR, 17 MOV, same style of Delrin saw-cut handles, same bolster, just different blade steel, different country of origin. $49 seems a little aggressive to me. You're not getting very much special here. This is a knife that's been in production a very long time, and I do think that you are paying a little bit for that prestige, for that history, which if that's what you like to do, that's fine, but is definitely not the be-all, end-all, in my opinion. And at that basically $50 price point, right? And this is obviously all in Canadian, $50 Canadian. At that just about $50 price point, there is a lot of stuff competing with this, and there is a lot of stuff that, in my opinion, is better. The obvious go-to, of course, being, like... I mean, if you want a small knife... let me go into my drawer here. The Morikniv Eldris is a very similar amount of blade, slightly less, but a very similar amount of blade, a more comfortable handle. This is an exceptionally comfortable handle for what it is. You have a blade that'll actually strike a fire steel. It's a little bit slicier. This is a phenomenal example of a small knife, and whilst it doesn't have, like, the sheath isn't quite as good, these two are in the same price point, and this one here is, in my opinion, better made, better blade steel. This is like 12C27, I think, Stanvik. So yeah, like the Eldris is obviously a very competitive example for the same price. You also have like the Morikniv Companion F, which is more blade, more handle. This is also a very, very comfortable handle, potentially even more so. It's comfortable in different ways. But the Morikniv Companion F, which is obviously a phenomenal knife. And then you have a bunch of stuff out of Buck's lineup. You have a bunch of stuff out of Cold Steel's got some stuff in this price point. Lots of different people have a lot of stuff in this slightly under $50 price point, which means that this has a lot to compete with. Even the Sharpfinger, the old-timer Sharpfinger, gets you more blade, slightly better profile for skinning and that type of thing. So yeah, I do think that the modern version of this loses out quite a bit. But this older version with the convex blade is absolutely phenomenal. If you see one, it is totally worth picking up. The sheath is very high quality, thick leather, well made. It's also all made out of one piece of leather, which is just nice aesthetically. I don't think it makes that big of a difference, but it is nice aesthetically. So yeah, for just kind of a whittling knife, a smaller on the belt knife, this is a really good example. Because so much of the weight is in your hand, it means that the blade itself is very easy to manipulate and very easy to use for an extended period of time. And just overall, this is a very, very pleasant example of a knife. So I do think it comes highly recommendable. Stay safe and have fun out there. Peace.